Everyone, and welcome back to the Coco Nomad channel. And this is the weekly retrospective and review where I talk about how the previous week went. So let's go ahead and get started with what went well. I have moved to Guatemala. You can see my virtual background. It's one of the churches in the downtown El Centro. I live probably like a 5 to 7 minute walk from the center of the city, and we'll show maybe some B-roll of the apartment, which is really nice. Moved in. It was a long travel day, even though it was a short flight. So basically, the flight was about an hour and a half, and I'm sorry, hour and 10 minutes. But it took like an hour and a half to get from the airport to Antigua, and was mostly because of traffic. I think it's probably like a 30 to 45 minute drive if there was no traffic, but there was a ton of traffic, and my driver left his driver's license at home, so we had to go to his house and get that before we got started. Thankfully, he lived really close to the airport, so it was literally like around the corner. So that part wasn't that bad. It was just really funny. So I'm getting settled in here. I really do love this apartment. It's really comfortable. It's very spacious. There's a bit of an echo here though, and that's the only concern when it comes to making videos. And I cannot find my lavalier mic. So pardon, I'm gonna try to fix that in post, but at least the audio quality is still good because I do have a quality microphone that I'm using. The other thing that went well is I made good progress on one of my SwiftUI products. I've mentioned that I have a SwiftUI MVP channel, and I've been working on making some videos there to help people who are developing mobile apps or Mac apps on the Apple platform using the SwiftUI approach to the language, the declarative programming language. I really like it. There's a project that sort of caught my attention and my fancy because as a poker player, I can only play online right now. A site that I use has this sort of game within a game, sort of something you can do to try to. I mean, they're always trying to get money out of you, but I don't pay. Play for free, and I'm not interested in giving them, money for virtual. It's just a way to see hands and practice. But I found one of these mini games that is outside of the actual playing that it was really interesting, and so I was like, well, maybe I can just make an app around this. It would be a nice way to sort of showcase some of the features in SwiftUI. So I ended up spending about half a day working on it. So still a bit of work to do, but I like the progress that I've made. And I think it's going to take me maybe another couple of days to have it completely done with the project, adding some of the better visual elements, and then the makings of both a series of videos and potentially a course. It may just be a mini course, something that I'll release that won't be very long, but it just depends on how long it's going to take me to take someone through this, explain some of the concepts if they're just coming into SwiftUI, and then completing and making this neat little game. So that's what went well. What didn't go well is part of moving here to Guatemala. So the first thing is when I first arrived. Again, I love this apartment. It's amazing. But the internet connection is not great. It has a Wi-Fi connection. It was raining. It started downpouring almost as soon as I got into the apartment, and the rain is affecting the connection. And so at times when it's raining, there's no connection whatsoever. I asked about it, and thankfully the host sent someone over, some of the staff that works here in the building, to come and help. And there's really honestly nothing they can do though. The speed isn't super fast. And so even when it's not, it reminds me of that movie Unbreakable and maybe Glass, the main character played by Bruce Willis. He's like super strong, and his connection when it works is very solid, but its weakness is water. So to get wet, it just dies. And so I was like, oh, great. So, and I noticed this in the city. I've been to a workspace here that I'm going to start working at called Impact Hub, and they only have 10 meg. It's a 10 meg, but it's very, very good. Like I had the best and clearest video call yesterday or day before yesterday that I've had in a long time, even with faster connections in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. Even at 10 meg down, it's really, really solid. So I'm looking forward, and actually I'm headed over there that'll be my workspace. And if you notice in my work locations for Digital Nomads video, which I'll link to, I talk about this and the reasons why you want to pick these different locations and having backups. And there's also cafes here, and they're supposedly really, really good. And some are advertising fast Wi-Fi, so I will be going to check some of those out. Might drop a couple of those lists along the way. I'm here for 2 months, at least based here for 2 months. I don't know if I'll actually be staying in the apartment full time for 2 months because I have some side trips planned. I'd like to go to like Antigua and some other places, maybe even visiting the city, possibly popping back into Playa del Carmen to do some stand up. And so we'll see how that goes. Another thing that didn't go well was, speaking of stand up, I was gonna had another set written. I was gonna do last Tuesday night, but then I got a COVID scare. One of the friends in Playa, we work out of the same co-working space, and she's also another comic. She had a party at her place Friday night, and even though it was open air in her backyard, and there weren't a ton of people there, some of the guests that came over tested positive. So it's like, oh, and so she let everyone know and let everyone know in the workspace, because again, we're sharing the co-working space as well. And so it was just like, okay, I need to go ahead and get tested. And right the day before or 2 days before my flight. So I was like super concerned. And so I ended up just like taking them like, all right, I need to get the test done. And I went around town to try to find the fastest way to do that. And so I ended up not doing my set for that Tuesday night's open mic. I'd written a like not a completely new 5 minute set, but I did write like half of the jokes were new or repurposed from like previous stuff that I had written. So I was going to be performing those jokes for the first time. So I'll get around to that. It also impacted. I didn't get a chance to record the Swift UI videos that I wanted to, but moving along with the Swift, the Poker Blitz is the name of this app that I'm working on. Is I did make progress with that, so it sort of allows me to highlight what I need to videotape for these videos. So it's a bit of a delay, but not a huge problem. And then the internet not working just reminded me of, I posted something about this, and one of my friends I've known for years, we traveled together on remote here in 2016. I was like reminding him of Bolivia, and that's exactly what it reminded me of here. It's like being here, initially coming in the first day, nothing working, no internet. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. What am I gonna do? And so I was pretty much down for a day, and that's okay. So, what did I learn? Well, one of the things that I learned, if we're just staying with the comedy writing, we had I would host uh, workshops at my apartment when we were in Playa. People would come over, comics would come over, either first timers or experienced ones, and we just work on jokes and try them out with each other and see like what we thought we might do for the open mic. Well, one of the people that came over, Scott Jordan, I know, he actually had done it before. He was the most experienced person. And so he had taken a class and he shared some really cool techniques. And it was really interesting because it's like a creative technique where you take a premise or an idea or something that you like, and then you have to write 8 things about it, like talking about how you feel about it, what you think about it. And you're basically just trying to brainstorm around this idea of the premise that you might have for a joke. And I thought it was a really good technique for just brainstorming in general. If I have an idea and just kind of take that and break it down by writing 8 things about it. And then you can go one level deeper and iterate on one of those small things, and eventually you'll come up with something. So I love brainstorming. I love coming up with ideas. So it just hit me where I live. So I will be using that for jokes. I'll be using it for blog posts, anything, any ideas. I just thought it was really neat. The other thing that I learned is the value of the disconnection. Like, one of the things that happened was because I didn't have the internet, I didn't have the distraction of the constant pinging of notifications. I didn't feel the pressure to check email because I couldn't. I was sort of like off the grid electronically, as it were, for an entire day. And while it had some negative impact, because I did plan on working for on some client stuff, and I couldn't get it done because I have to. It requires me to be online the entire time. So I had to move that. But that was the impetus of me making the real progress on the Poker Blitz app. So it's like, oh, well, this I can do. I don't need a connection. I'm creating all this stuff from scratch, and I'm just going to go. And so I use that time to do that, make significant progress, and just had some time for reflection too. It's just like disconnected, no distractions, having this space that's really large, hence the echo, that I can just use and just, and I think that's what this space will be now. Again, when I talk about work locations and having these clear separations, and which led me to the other learning this week, which is you do have to defend your time and space. I was talking to my brother Raheem. We're doing like some prep for another episode of the Indie Creator Studio, and we're talking about this challenge of constantly trying to find time where we can do these calls and we can record episodes for that channel because he's got a lot of family pressures. The kids are still at home learning, and then the job, he's got different projects, all these kinds of things, family, parents, all this kind of thing. And I'm just like, oh, I wasn't dealing with those kinds of restrictions, but I'm starting to see a little bit of that now, a lot more so now that I'm really moving full fledged into these other projects. So this project is now taking up more time, which is reducing the amount of time that I have available. And then the personal reflection time that was the most important. You got to defend it. You got to defend the space and time you set aside for reflection, recharging, and reviewing. It's one of the reasons why I do this on Sundays. It's just my time. I spend pretty much half a day. The only extra time is actually just recording this to share. So I had an insight into this process, but I encourage you to do the same. And then the final lesson that I'm learning, and this will be an IG short as well, I'll just record something a little different here, is just the learning that this pursuit of perfection is like this idea we get sometimes that things have to be perfect, or that perfect, even as a concept, I think is just a supreme waste of time. It's a time killer, it's an energy killer, it's an attention killer, it's a joy killer. It's not a goal. Stop pursuing it. There's no such thing. And I'll dive into an example that I thought was pretty funny. And I was thinking about this yesterday as I was going grocery shopping in the IG short. But just think about it. You spend amount of time and energy you spend trying to figure out how something would be perfect, what the definition of that is. It's just like there's be time you could be spending actually doing a thing and enjoying your life. Okay. So this moves us into what still puzzles me. And this week, the big thing is I was going through the Poker Blitz code. I'm writing and building the project. So building an entire project, and then I'll have a final project. And then I'm going to do another like starter project and walk people through it. And I'm still trying to figure out how to separate the code into different modules, understanding what someone may or may not understand, and then going back and reviewing it. So what'll probably happen, and I think it's probably the best approach, is to release these videos on the channel, get feedback from people as I'm taking them through the playlist, and then refine that into what may be the final course. That would be a bit better, that makes sure that there's no gaps. I'm explaining things clearly, people are understanding, and it's a valid and worthwhile endeavor. So if not, it's just some cool videos on the channel. People can learn how to do some individual techniques. And then the second one that I'm still puzzled by is because I'm starting to do some of this shorter form video, I'm doing IG shorts. I did my first IG short 2 to 3 days ago. I had been doing, not IG short, I'm sorry, YouTube shorts. IG I've been doing for a while, but I was going to try out the YouTube shorts just to see how this works in combination with the channel. I think there's only one available now. While we're at this, we're thinking about this, go ahead and smash that like button for me so that other people can find these videos. They're really, really, really helpful. I always forget to make that ask, but I really would appreciate if you do that. But I'm making these smaller videos, and I don't have a good way to organize and categorize them so that I can use them as snippets or put them like even as a part of videos, like longer videos like this. I'm not a fan. I have a Mac. I'm a huge fan of the Apple platform in terms of the products, but not so much just in terms of like the software products. Let's just say the products, but not the software applications. And photos, the photo app being one of those. Like it frustrates me a lot to actually use it. And I think some things should be simpler. And movie I mentioned before, like the ability to extract segments is another one of those things that really frustrates me. So I'm looking for some alternatives. If you know of some, whether it's an alternative to iMovie in terms of the photos, to categorize and manage your photos and keep them stored so that they're accessible when you need them and not just sitting up in the cloud or even on my machine. I can't get to them. I can't export them. I can't just drag and drop them somewhere else. It's very frustrating. Maybe I'm missing a technique and you can point me to that, or maybe I should just be using a completely different software product. So that would be incredibly helpful. And then what will I do differently this week? I have to set up a new daily routine. And I'll talk about this more in another video, but I'm a big fan of having routines. And even if you're not doing the exact same thing every day, but just having a routine, and maybe like a weekly routine is probably a better way for me to describe the way I do it. But I'm in a new location and I have to go through the process again of learning what the routine is for this place. It's one of the reasons why I'm more of a slow mad. I spend more time in one place than hopping around because that's one of those context switches where it just takes time and energy to figure out what is my new routine. And I have some core things there that I like doing. For instance, walking. Walking is very important to me. So I don't have a bike. So I never got a scooter. Well, I rarely get a scooter. I get scooters in certain places, like Thailand. I'm getting a scooter on Copenhagen, but like in the bigger cities, I just want to walk around, and I don't have a bike because I'd like to do that, which can be difficult. It was incredibly hot in Playa del Carmen the last month and a half, and it would have been great to have a bike to get around. But I just prefer walking. It just does something for me personally. So that's part of my routine. But the workspace, where I work from, setting that up, where am I going to get my groceries, my local market, where are my favorite places to get coffee? I just found a cool Taiwanese place around the corner. So I've already eaten there twice. So that one, check off the list. New favorite restaurant. And then what new forms these things were taking in terms of this new routine. So the exercise routine, like I have a workout that I can do at home with a limited amount of space, but in the context of this new space, which I'm not showing because I'm in my bedroom and I just, bed's not in the best of shape. So I'm giving you this beautiful virtual background instead, but I have to still figure it out. So like if it's outside, my patio space is large enough, I can work out up there. If I have a rooftop, I can work out up there. What these different, what the routine specifically looks like, even though the elements are the same, what form does it take? And so I'll do a video where I dive into this and what that is here because I'm having to do it right now. And I think it's important that if you're going to be changing locations, or even when you get to a new location, no matter how long you're going to be there, I think it's a process that you want to take into account. So in the effort of moving on and not keeping it for too long, let's do the what did I ship? So we already talked about my successful relocation here to Guatemala. I'm in Antigua. It's great. I wrote those jokes and I've made my first YouTube short. So those are all excellent things. My commitment for this week is to finish the Poker Blitz app, like finish the project, break out those shorter snippets and make and produce 3 videos. So the first 3 videos out of that will be there. And then for this channel, of course, this video, and then I'll do one of the topics, and that topic might be developing a new routine or settling, creating a new routine, a new location. That might be the topic video this week. I have some other ideas. We'll see which one comes out. Some of them will be shorter than others because I don't like to keep, I like to get to the point, give you the information because you've got other things to do. And are there any blockers? Yes, the rain. If it rains, my internet connection at home is really not great, and I have to find alternatives. And I still need to buy an umbrella because walking up and down these streets are all cobblestone because this is a UNESCO site, the entire city. And so even when you're walking around, like you can't really tell what a place is unless you look at the signs. Like I walked right past a Wendy's and a Dunkin' Donuts and a Little Caesars and didn't even recognize it because it's in the same like colonial style. And it's just like, wait a minute, it's a Dunkin', which poses another challenge, but that's a donut challenge that I'm actually glad to like take on. We'll see. But it's just interesting. But the streets are wet, and when they get wet, the cobblestone have to be really careful walking. It's just easy to slip and fall. So I had that experience in Cusco, Peru, back in 2016. So I bought some new shoes. Hopefully this will help, and we'll see how that goes. But that blocker is rain. I'm going to close out. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have an amazing week. Share what you're trying to accomplish this week. I'd love to hear about this stuff. If you have any techniques, again, or tools that I can use to improve my processes, I'd love to hear that as well. Have an amazing week. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click subscribe, share if you think this will help someone, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.